Vice President. Vice President occupies the second highest office in the country. Right. The first highest office is going to be the President. He is accorded the rank of the President in official warrant of precedence. Right. So he is given the rank which is next to the President in the official warrant of the Presidents. Now we know first we be having the President. The second is going to be the Vice President. When we have the President and the Vice President, then we will be having the Prime Minister and the Governor. So President and Vice President, then next parties are Prime Ministers and Governors. Next are in line is the former President. Once the former President, we will be having the Deputy PM. Right. So we will be having the President and then we have the Vice President. After them is what we have the Prime Ministers, and then we have next in categories. This is going to be the executives order of the presidents, right? First four are the executives. Now former president and then the deputy prime minister. Former president only, then we are having the deputy prime minister. We have the PM and then the governor. Next is the governor and former president, and we have deputy PM. After they are being completed, we have both two members together. Chief Justice of the India becomes a speaker. Chief Justice of the India and the speaker together. Then we have the cabinet ministers. Cabinet minister alone. Cabinet minister, CM and former PM. CM, former PM. Then we have the leader of opposition. Leader of opposition in the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Even the chairman, deputy chairman of the Niti Aayog. So these are the members which we have to remember, right? The first thing we have to remember is the President, Vice President, then comes the Prime Minister. President, Vice President, Prime Minister is coming, and then after the Prime Minister, we say we have Governor. And once the Governor is completed, again we are having the Governor goes to President, right? So we have former Presidents and then Deputy Presidents. Then separately we will be having that sixth one is Chief Justice of India along with the Speaker. Then Cabinet CM along with the opposition leaders of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha and Deputy Chairman of Niti Aayog. Then we have the holders of Bharat Ratna, ambassadors, chief ministers of states. This is the order of precedence in India, right? Next, we'll be having that his office is modeled on the lines of American vice presidents. Sometimes scholars call his superfluous highness. So he is similar to American vice president, right? He is similar to the American vice president and his superfluous highness. He is called as superfluous highness. So our president is not similar to the American president, but here the vice president is being similar to the American vice president. Election, he is not directly elected, but he is elected only by the members of electoral colleges. They are going to have both elected and nominated of only the parliament. He is only the parliament. It does not include the members of the state legislative assembly and the union territory. He includes only the parliament, right? He is not directly elected, but he is elected by the members of the electoral college. So this electoral college is going to consist of both the direct and indirectly elected members and directly elected members and elected and nominated members of the parliament and not the state legislatures or the union territories. Election is also by proportional representation, single transferable voting and secret ballot. This is same as that of the president. So proportional representation by means of a single transferable vote, and then we have a secret ballot, which is same as president. Returning officer is usually appointed to conduct the vice presidential elections in the state secretary general of the house or the parliament by rotation. Any disputes related to vice president is inquired by Supreme Court, whose decision is final. Even the disputes related to president is inquired by the Supreme Court. The disputes related to election of MP or MLA is inquired by the High Courts. But the dispute of president and vice president is inquired by the Supreme Court, whose decision is final. The election of the office of the Vice President is conducted by the Election Commission of the India. The next election will be held within 60 days before the expiry of the outgoing Vice President. Right. So, we need to keep the election within 60 days. Within the 60 days. 60 days within the election of the outgoing Vice President. Then the citizen's qualification is going to be the 35 years, the same as the president of 35 years. President also has 35 years. But what varies is here is that he should be have the qualifications of a member of Rajya Sabha, whereas president should hold the qualifications of a member of Lok Sabha. So he is having the qualifications of the Rajya Sabha and office of profit. All the executives usually do not hold an office of profit. Now the sitting president or the vice president, the governor of any state, minister or of any state is not deemed to hold office of profit. I told right, sitting president, vice president, even the governors and the ministers of union or the state. The oath is administered by the president and some person appointed on his behalf. The conditions of the office are he is not a member of either house of the parliament or a house of the state legislature. Should not hold the office of profit. Constitution has no fixed emoluments, draws salaries as the ex officio chairman of the Rajya Sabha. So he vice president is not having any salary. He is deriving salary for his duty of chairman of the Rajya Sabha. So the vice president is not deriving salary for the post of the vice president. He is called a superfluous highness. So he is called as a superfluous highness, right? The vice president is not deriving a salary on himself. He is deriving salary on account of the work he performs as the chairman of Rajya Sabha. Term of the office is usually 5 years and resigns by a letter to the president. And impeachment is not required for the removal and removal by effective majority. Effective majority is the majority of the then members of the house. So what is the effective majority? Effective majority is the majority of the then members of the house. Is what we call it as the effective majority. Right. He is removed by effective majority resolution is passed in the Rajya Sabha. Lok Sabha is going with the simple majority. Every notice is going to serve a 14-day period notice on ground for the removal mentioned in the constitution. Right. The office fall vacant by resignation, removal, death or otherwise. Election is as possible. The vice president holds the office beyond a term until the successor assumes the charge, re-elected number of times. So the president and the vice president, they hold the term. They hold beyond a term if a successor is not assumed the chair. Right. If the successor is not assumed the charge, they hold beyond the term. Election disputes is handled by the Supreme Court, whose decision is final. No such dispute can be raised on the ground of vacancy of the electoral college. If election is declared void, the acts done by him before the date of such declaration of the Supreme Court are not invalidated. Ex officio chairman of the Rajya Sabha. He resembles the American vice president who acts as the chairman of the Senate. So he is the ex officio chairman of the Rajya Sabha and it resembles the American vice president, right? It resembles the American vice president. He is the chairman of the Rajya Sabha and it is the chairman of the Senate. So we'll be having the chairman of Rajya Sabha, or we call it as the chairman of the Senate. As a presiding officer, the chairman of the Rajya Sabha is unchallenged guardian of the prestige and dignity of the House. He is also the principal spokesman of the House and represents the collective voice outside the House. He ensures that the proceedings of the House are conducted in accordance with the relevant constitutional provisions, rules, practices, and conventions, and that decorum is maintained in the House. He is the custodian and the guardian of the rights and the privileges of the House and its members. Vice President acts as President when there is a vacancy in the President's office due to death or removal. During his period, his salaries and allowances he receives the salaries and allowances of president. He acts as a president only for a maximum period of 6 months. While acting as a president, he does not perform the duties of the chairman of Rajya Sabha. Those are performed by the deputy chairman of the Rajya Sabha. Indian and American vice presidents. American vice president succeeds to presidency when it falls vacant and remains president for the remaining unexpired term of his predecessor. That Indian vice president does not assume the office of the president when it falls vacant for an unexpired term. He merely serves as an acting president. His office was created to maintain the political continuity. R.S. Radhakrishna and Hamid Ansari elected as vice president for 2 years. Krishnakant, first vice president who died serving the office. Unlike presidential elections, the value of every vote of a vice presidential election has the same value, that is 1. Right. Every vote of the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha members is 1. Anti-defection law is not possible in the case of presidential and vice presidential elections. In both the cases, the members of the Electoral College can vote according to their conscience, choice, wish, and they are not bound by any party whip. So, for a presidential and vice presidential, they are not bound by the party whip. This is the most important statement of all, right? They are not bound, it is of their choice, and they are not bound by the party whip. Now, what is another important point to be noted? Anti-defection law is not applicable. It is bound to the party whip. Unlike the presidential election, the value of every vote in the vice presidential election has the same value, that is 1. So, what is the value of the presidential election is 1 is the value, right? R.S. Radhakrishna and Hamid Ansari held the term twice. Now, what are the important facts is Indian and American vice presidents. We know that vice president succeeds, American vice president succeeds the presidency when it falls vacant and remains for the remaining term, unexpired term. Then the powers is, there is no specific or very important power to be remembered. And in election disputes is dealt by the Supreme Court. How does the removal is by the effective majority? 14 days notice period and falls vacant by the resignation, removal or otherwise. Right. The vice president can hold the office beyond his term of if a successor assumes lately. He is the chairman of the Rajya Sabha and his emoluments are derived as the role of chairman of the Rajya Sabha. His qualifications are 35 years and qualified to be elected as a member of Rajya Sabha. He do not hold an office of profit. And the election is only both the members are taking place. Introduction. That's all. We call he's similar to the American vice president, and they are called as the His Superfluous Highness. That's all related to the vice president.